In this video, we're going to look at the power rule, but we're going to look at the power rule with more complicated functions than what you're used to. Generally, we've been looking at x cubed, x squared, very simple polynomials, but the power rule can also be used for equations with radicals or with equations with where x is in the denominator of a fraction. So in order to use the power rule, first you have to rewrite any function that can be rewritten into the form x to a power, x to the n. So for example, f of x equals radical x, you would rewrite this as f of x equals x to the 1/2. Or f of x equals 1 over x to the 4th, that is equivalent to x to the -4. So hopefully you remember those rewriting rules from trig class 2 years ago. So you do need to know how to rewrite radicals and negative exponents. So let's look at example 1. Use the power rule to find the following derivatives. In example 1, the first expression is just a plain power rule. We don't need to rewrite this one because that radical 3 is just a constant. It's just a number. So let's not worry about that one. We also don't have to rewrite the second term because there's only a constant in the denominator. There's no x in the denominator. Plus pi is just a number. There's nothing to rewrite there. So the problem is this x times radical x in the denominator of this fraction. So the first thing you need to do is rewrite this as 2 over x times x to the 1/2. So we're going to have to do a couple things to simplify this. You cannot do the power rule when you have x times x. You need to combine those x's first. And the way we do this, when you multiply x's, you add the exponents. So x by itself is x to the 1. So x to the 1 times x to the 1/2 is the same thing as x to the 3/2, because you got to do 1 plus a half. And then this x is in the denominator of a fraction. We've got to move it up by writing this as 2x to the -3/2. So when we take the derivative of this last term, we're going to use this 2x to the -3/2. So the derivative of radical 3x to the 7, bring down the 7, would be 7 radical 3 x to the 6th. The derivative of negative x to the 5th over 5 is negative 5x to the 4th over 5. You just take the derivative of the top. The bottom is just a constant, so you just leave it there. This is like having 1/5 x to the 5th. And you notice you can simplify these 5's. They cancel each other out. Plus pi. Pi is a constant, so the derivative of pi is 0. And then the last term, we're going to do 2 times the -3/2, and it's actually a -2. So 2 times the -3/2 would give us positive 3. And then we're going to do -3/2 minus 1, which is -5/2. So this would be the derivative. So take a moment, try number 2, pause the video when you're finished. When you think you've got your answer, unpause the video and the answer will appear. The answer is 5/2 x to the -1/2 plus 20 x to the -3 minus 1/4 x to the -3/2. If you didn't get any of this, please bring your questions to class. Okay, we're going to try a couple more examples. These functions are all going to have to be simplified before we can use the power rule. We cannot use the power rule on any kind of multiplication or division. We have to simplify first. And you'll notice there's only one term in the denominator here, which means that we can divide both terms separately. So we're really going to split this into 3x over x squared minus 4x squared over x squared. And we're going to simplify this. So 3x over x squared, this is x to the 1 over x2, so this becomes 3 over x, minus 4, because the x squareds cancel each other out. And then we do have to rewrite this 3 over x. This is x to the 1, so since it's in the denominator, we would write it as 3x to the -1 minus 4. And now we're ready to take the derivative. So now we apply the power rule. So 3 times -1 is -3. -1 minus 1 is -2, and the minus 4 becomes a 0. So the derivative is -3x squared. X to the -2, sorry, not squared. Okay, we're going to do the same thing in number 2. We're going to write this as 2 radical x over radical x minus 5x over radical x. So in the first term, the radical x cancel out and you're just left with a 2. For the second term, you've got to rewrite that radical x as x to the 1/2. And then we're going to combine, so x to the 1 over x to the 1/2, you're going to subtract your exponents. So this is really just 5, x to the 1 minus 1/2 is x to the 1/2. 1 minus 1/2 is 1/2. And now we can do the power rule. So the 2 becomes a 0, so we don't have to worry about it, and we're going to apply the power rule to the second term. So we get negative 5/2, and then x to the 1/2 becomes x to the negative 1/2. 1/2 minus 1 is x to the negative 1/2. Okay, same deal. You try the next 2, pause the video. When you're done, unpause the video, and the answers will appear. If you did not get these answers, please bring your questions to class.